What's going on, guys? Today we have a super fun one for you. It's actually not. It's actually pretty boring, and we're talking about the cost of living in Rochester, New York. Let's get into it right now. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you're notified every Tuesday and Thursday that I release a new video. That being said, as much as I love making these videos for you on all things living, breathing, eating, sleeping, playing in the Finger Lakes and Rochester regions, I would love even more to help you with those real estate needs. So whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days, I would be honored to be the guy that you reach out to. So the information that's popping up on your screen, I am the guy that answers those texts, emails, and phone calls. So be sure to do that. I would be honored again to help you make that transition as smoothly as possible. So with that being said, today we have a boring topic for you, but it's just as important as all the other videos that we've done here on the channel. And we're talking about the cost of living in Rochester, New York. Let's go. All right, guys. So of course, not super fun, I understand, but it is super important that you guys understand these statistics and data points before moving to the Rochester area, because obviously cost of living plays a huge factor in how you're going to live, where you're going to live, and what you're going to be able to afford. So with this probably won't be that long of a video. I know I've said that before and it ended up being like 25 minutes or whatever, but we're going to try and keep it on the short end and not bore you guys with this. So with the cost of living, we're going to be talking about a national average, Rochester in comparison to the New York average and the national average. So the national average is going to be ranked at a 100. So anything above 100 is going to be more expensive than the national average, and anything below 100 is going to be cheaper than the national average. And same goes for the state of New York. So we're going to compare Rochester, New York, and the national average. All right. So overall, generally speaking, we're talking Rochester is cheaper than the national average. So Rochester is given an 83.2 overall. Again, national average being 100, New York State being 121.5. So New York State as a whole is significantly more expensive than the national average, but to the contrast though, Rochester is actually significantly below the national average. So living up in this part, Western New York, the Finger Lakes and Rochester regions, you are living significantly below the national average overall, which is pretty significant because you're talking at 83.2 versus that 100, right, of the national average. So pretty significant. Now, the things that you actually care about, right? Groceries are going to be just about right on par with national average. It's going to be a 97.8. So New York State as a whole is 103.8. So, you have that 6-point swing or whatever, but the Rochester area is about 2.2 points lower than the national average. So I guess, all in all, it is cheaper, but can you really notice that difference? I don't know. You'd have to consider the gallon of milk, in another state versus Rochester. Like, it might not really matter that much, but it does compare to the national average pretty well. Moving on, let's talk about healthcare. Healthcare is going to be a 107.3 in the Rochester area, and New York as a whole is 120.7. So healthcare in New York is significantly more expensive than the national average. That being said, what I will say is with the University of Rochester here in Rochester, you're getting better healthcare. You're getting better hospitals, right? More well-trained nurses and doctors, and just the university hospital system is just outstanding. I've mentioned it multiple times on the channel. So while you are paying for more, right? And of course your insurance covers a majority of it or whatever, but while you are paying more for healthcare, you do get better healthcare. So again, that's 7.3 points above the national average, and New York as a whole is 120.7, or it's 20.7 above the national average. Going into my favorite portion of the cost of living here is housing. So guys, get this. This is actually pretty significant. So again, let's remind you, national average is a score of a 100. The Rochester area housing market is a 44.8. That's pretty significant. That's, you know, that's over 50 points, 55 points below the national average. That's pretty significant. We're talking an average price point anywhere, depending on the areas that you're in, anywhere between, you know, 175,000 to 300,000. Whereas, you know, so actually I have that statistic. The median home cost in Rochester is 130,900. And this is as of 2021, so 2 years ago, but it's still relevant to today. Things haven't changed all that much. So percentage wise, it's going to be relatively the same. The New York State average or median home cost is 413,600, whereas the national average median home cost is 338,100. I mean, you're talking over $100,000 difference there. Almost $200,000 difference between Rochester and the national average for median home cost. So that's pretty significant. That makes Rochester one of the most affordable cities to live in and around when it comes to housing prices. You know, I've said it a few times that the Rochester and Finger Lakes market is, you know, maybe 2 or 3 years behind the rest of the country, right? So when it comes to housing, we will be, I think, at that, say, 338,000 mark for the median home price in the Rochester region, probably in about 2 or 3 years. But by that time, the rest of the country will be up at the 500,000 mark, right? So we're going to be below the national average. Rochester is just a cheaper city to live in, especially when it comes to housing prices. So with housing, you know, comes your utility costs. So you've got Rochester Gas and Electric, you've got NYSEG, that's the New York State Electric and Gas. Depending on where you are, if you live in Fairport, you have Fairport Electric. And so there's a few different utility providers in the area. But for the cost of utilities, you're looking at a 103.2. So you're 3.2 points over the national average. So you do have significantly lower cost of, for one, living, but housing costs here. But you do have a little bit more for utilities, which isn't the end of the world. I think you're still living significantly cheaper than the national average. To put that in perspective, Rochester is a 103.2. New York is a 115.9. for utilities. So New York as a whole is a lot more expensive when it comes to utilities than the national average, but New York as a whole is more expensive than Rochester when it comes to the average for utilities. So you're still living, statistically speaking, far cheaper than a majority of the rest of the state and the national average. Now, transportation, how are you going to get around? So this includes things like your public transit, your Uber, your Lyft, you know, the rates for those kind of things, taxis, whatever. It's a 90.6. So you're looking 10 points below national average. New York State as a whole, so, you know, it's important to note that New York State as a whole is factoring in New York City. New York City, obviously, everything is incredibly inflated. But New York as a whole is a 140.7, so significantly higher than the Rochester region. But you can get around, you can travel, you can put gas in your car for a lot cheaper in the Rochester region than the national average, which is pretty significant to note. And then your miscellaneous costs. So these are things like clothing, restaurants, repairs, entertainment, and other services. You're looking at a 148.6. So generally speaking, kind of your miscellaneous expenses are significantly above the national average. But again, when you're looking at the overall cost of living for Rochester, you're looking at what, almost 17%, or 17 points rather, lower than the national average. So 17% lower than the national average. So that is pretty significant. Although the miscellaneous cost of living, right, is 148.6, that seems significant. Your housing is significantly cheaper. Your utilities are right on par. Your transportation is significantly cheaper. Your healthcare is a little bit more expensive, but you get better healthcare. Your groceries are a little bit less expensive. So generally speaking, everything is just about either on the national average, on par with the national average, or it's significantly cheaper than the national average, which is, it's that's a significant factor. And that's when I've been talking to a lot of you guys who have been relocating from other states. You've been telling me, look, we're looking to go somewhere that's affordable, because where we're living in California, or where we're living in Bogota, Colombia, or, you know, all sorts of these other places that you guys are coming from is just more expensive, far more expensive. And so the Rochester region kind of balances out like the beauty, like the things to do, the great place for a family, and the cost of living is affordable as well. So you kind of get it all packaged in one lump sum, and it just makes a great place for you guys to come move to. Of course, we have things like crime, we have things like weather, or things like maybe politics that you don't agree with. But generally speaking, it is a great place to live, and cost of living kind of proves that. You get great quality of life with a significantly lesser cost of living. So that's pretty significant in my opinion. And, you know, it's proving that a lot of you guys are, there's 90,000 of you guys that relocate here every single year to the Rochester region, and not all of it is just for employment purposes. Some of it is by choice, and that's because of cost of living and because of the natural beauty of Rochester, and, you know, a few other things. So that's really it. That's the video, guys. One thing that I'll note here, just because I'm looking at it, the average rental prices for the Rochester region, for a 3-bedroom, the average rent price for a 3-bedroom apartment is going to be about almost $1,500 a month. Now, in my opinion, that's going to be a little bit on the low side. I think it's gone up a little bit since 2021 when this data was recorded. I would say now the average in the Rochester region is going to go more toward about $1,700 a month. There's some that are considered like luxury apartments that, you know, they're $2,300 a month or $2,500 a month. And then there's some that are like lower end that, you know, might be $800, $900, $1,000 a month or whatever. So to put that into perspective, a 3-bedroom apartment in Rochester is $1,400. So New York as a whole is $2,400 a month. And then the United States is $1,860 a month. So it's a pretty significant, I mean, you're talking about a $400 difference per month in rental prices. So if you have to come here and rent, they're not taking every penny out of your pocket. You're going to have some living money as well. So that's pretty significant to know. And, you know, there's definitely pros and cons to living here in Rochester and the Finger Lakes regions. And a lot of you guys in the comments point that out and you're pretty candid about that, and I appreciate that. But cost of living is one of the pros of living here in Rochester and the Finger Lakes region, and it's just so much cheaper to live here than so many other places throughout the United States. And it's just hard to ignore that, right? When you're looking for affordability, it's extremely important that you factor all of these things in, right? And not even just the points that I mentioned, but there's additional points too that maybe I'll talk about in another video. And, you know, maybe we'll get more into the nitty-gritty of things, but for the sake of this video that I'm doing right now, that's about it. Don't ignore the cost of living whenever you're deciding to move somewhere. It's super important. So that being said, guys, I appreciate you. If you stuck around to the end of this video, thank you. Thank you. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you're notified every Tuesday and Thursday that I release a new video. And as much as I love making these videos, I would love even more to help you with that move in that transition here to the Rochester and Finger Lakes regions, and talk more about cost of living and, you know, how we can help transition you and your family for the situation that you guys are in into either a house or an apartment or whatever. So whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days, be sure to reach out to the information on the screen below. I am the guy that answers those texts, emails, and phone calls. So until the next video, guys, have a great day. Bye.